welcome to Marketing Monday. Not wins and fails, just Marketing Monday. We have a very special issue today because apparently there was some big news. Apparently, it turns out while I was working on a Sunday for a normal Marketing Monday wins and fails, the world decided to change drastically in 48 hours. For example, the entire stock market had a massive dip. The NASDAQ was down, the S&P 500 was down, Bitcoin was down, Ethereum was down, gold for some reason was down, crude oil was down. Japan had the biggest one-day drop since 1987. Mounted concerns over the economy and a recoil from the overheated artificial intelligence rally. Global markets are rattled by the prospect of a US recession. Taiwan had the worst day in 57 years. Are you winning, Dad? Son, pack up your stuff. I just lost the house. Cause everything was down. Same time as all that happening, Google gets declared a monopoly out of nowhere. The judges came out and said, hey, yeah, I looked at the facts. You're definitely a monopoly. And in fact, by spending billions of dollars to be the default search on every platform, you are 100% killing your competitors. We don't know what the punishment will be, but that's happening. This is crazy. I did not expect this at all. I would have made a whole video about this, but at the same time, Venezuela is having even more election protests and riots as the world is splitting down the middle on whether or not they support the current leader Maduro and his, I think, fraudulent election win. At the same time as that, there's riots in Bangladesh, where the Prime Minister of Bangladesh has fled the country. There's no leader in Bangladesh right now. At the same time as you want to make a video on that, there's riots in the damn UK. There's riots in like 14 cities in the UK, anti-immigration riots, where people are storming hotels containing refugees and trying to drag them out into the street. There's chaos in literally countries all over the world as the stock market falls, as Google's getting caught as a monopoly. At the same time, in this past couple days, I just saw literally the worst answer on inflation I've ever seen.
What else are you going to do to fix this problem with inflation?
Prices have gone up, and families and individuals are dealing with the realities of that bread costs more, that gas costs more. And we have to understand what that means. That's about the cost of living going up. That's about having to stress and stretch limited resources. And we know from the history of this issue in the United States that when you see these prices go up, it has a direct impact on the quality of life for all people in our country. So it's a big issue, and we take it seriously. And it is a priority, therefore.
The question was, what are you going to do about it? Not what is it? I assume if the reporter's asking, what do you do about inflation? They know what inflation is. At the same time as that terrible answer is happening, I look over at her competitor, Donald Trump. Is TikTok dancing with Aiden Ross in front of a MAGA Cybertruck? What is happening in the world? With XQC in the background wearing a Trump t-shirt where he has a grill.
We're gonna save TikTok.
Trump's gonna save TikTok because getting rid of TikTok would be good for China. That's what he just said. These are the people I have to vote for. I wanted to cover today, in the brief period that I had to put something together, the main reason, well, first of all, to calm your fears a little bit, I don't believe this is the big one. Okay? I don't believe this stock sell-off is anything more than a relatively minor bit of shaky turbulence. What I want to talk about is why we think this is happening particularly right now. Why sudden sell-off in the global markets originating out of Japan. What does Japan have to do with the rest of the world selling all of their assets? And so I want to explain basically the concept of the yen carry trade, which has surprising implications for global finance. Why does this stupid currency out of Ayaya Japan have so much influence over the world? Step one, borrow money where it's cheap. How do we figure that out? Well, let's look. This is the cost of borrowing set by the central banks of each country. United States, to combat inflation, raise cost of borrowing. The UK, raise cost of borrowing. Eurozone, raise cost of borrowing. Who's still down there at fucking zero? Japan. And they do that to help stimulate their frankly flagging economy. Step two, take that money you borrowed and convert it to United States dollars. Put on that cowboy hat, okay? Cowboy. So even though borrowing dollars would be expensive, you borrowed cheap yen and now you have dollars. Nice. Then step 3, take those dollars and buy something that goes up. It really is that simple, folks. Let's say you borrow at 1%, a billion yen. Then you convert it to dollars. Now you have $7 million. Nice. Then you buy a treasury bond, which gives you 5%. So now there's a gap. That 4% gap is awesome. Profit. You make $276,000 a year. Easy. It's so simple. People will make this seem like it's complicated, but honestly, honest to God, it really is that simple. And that is why so many people have been doing it. And it's guaranteed profit unless a couple things happen. The only way this wouldn't work, I guess, would be if one of these 3 steps broke down. Like this one, for example. The cost of borrowing yen went up. But that would require the Bank of Japan to raise their rate. Oh, that happened on July 31st. Well, they raised it, so now it costs a little bit more to borrow. Well, that's not good. Okay, that's only one thing, though. The other way this could fail is if step 2 didn't work. If the exchange ratio got bad and you don't get as much yen for each dollar. Oh. Oh, you could get 160 yen for a dollar a week ago. Now it's only 140. That would mean that, like, for example, the part where you convert the money back and pay off your original debt and make $276,000 a year, imagine if the exchange rate shifted even slightly, all of a sudden your 276K profit becomes a 450K loss. And that's only assuming the exchange rate changes slightly. Or the third thing that could happen, this is the worst of all. What if all of those things you bought that always go up, what if they stopped going up? What if all 3 of the steps of the yen carry trade all unwound within like a week at the exact same time? Well, in that case, trillions of dollars of bets from people all over the world that have been borrowing yen would have to sell at the exact same time. And that is exactly, what is happening. Okay, now there are many reasons. The fact that we're nearing riots in a number of countries and World War III is a big part of it. The fact that the US economy is clearly showing shakiness into a recession is part of it. But the reason it all happened so quickly is because of this massive unwinding of the Japanese carry trade. People have been making this very easy, no-lose bet for a while now. It is built up massively, and they are all having to panic sell very quickly. What caused the yen to correct so quickly? Great question. Maybe you've noticed that all of your friends are taking vacations to Japan because the yen has been so fucking cheap. And it's because the interest rate has been so low, it's been below 0 in Japan, that people have been borrowing yen, buying USD, which makes the yen weaker. It was going up and up and up and up, and it reached 160. And at the time it was reaching 160 was like the greatest time to vacation there and the worst time to be a Japanese citizen because you were getting paid in this currency that was worth less every day. And Japan imports everything. They're a fucking island nation. And the government of Japan is getting more and more panicked. And they were doing these defenses around 160. They were like taking some of their dollars and buying yen rapidly in the middle of the night, $40 billion, trying to defend it and scare people off of the speculating. Finally, they had to do the last big arrow they have, which is raise interest rates. They raise interest rates. Now, it's not even a lot. It's 0.25 and it's still small, but it was such a shock because it could mean, first of all, that more is coming. And second of all, if you were paying 0 or below 0 on your borrowed money and you have billions of dollars, even a little bit that you have to pay now is a lot of money. And so by doing this last panic defense, it's causing ripple effects all over the world. Why did they let it go on for so long? Again, we have to understand is no country is more in debt than Japan. People say Japan is the canary in the coal mine for all of our economies. Every country that has been just gorging on debt should look to Japan and see what their future holds. They have the worst demographics. They have all the old people, no babies. They have a ton of government debt and they have to figure it out. And we're all getting there, but they're there first. At the level of debt they have, high interest rates means they can't afford anything. They can't afford a military. They can't afford social services. They can't afford trains. They can't, you know what I'm saying? All of the government spending would go to interest payments. Japan does not want to raise interest rates because they can't afford it, but they had to do it to defend their currency. If they raise interest rates, they stop inflation, but then their government can't afford anything, or they keep interest rates low and keep taking on debt, but then their currency gets weaker and weaker and weaker. Those are their two options. They're both bad. I have not seen a credible solution for what Japan is going to do about this problem when you have this much debt. All I know is that their problems are now becoming the world's problems and leading to what you saw today, which was the massive sell-off. So how did Japan accrue so much debt? Such a complicated answer. When their real estate bubble exploded in the late 80s, they didn't want to deal with the short-term pain of that exploding. So they used a bunch of debt to smooth things over. It basically stifled all growth and they just ran on government debt for 10 years. Can we talk about the fact that Japan is the largest foreign owner of US debt, and as a Hail Mary for them, they might ask the US to pay back on our debt to them and they're forced to take out a ton more debt. We can talk about it. I will say, I'm not worried about Japan saying, hey, you have to pay back all your treasury bills right now, America, or else. That's not a real thing that happens, and also that's not how treasury bills work. They have a specific time on them. I am worried about Japan not having enough of an economy or dollars to keep buying US debt, because we rely on them. Imagine this flat line is like even, all right? And if we make more in taxes than we spend, it's positive. Okay? That's our government budget for, like, let's say 1999. Now, if we spend more than we make, that's a deficit. Now, when it's a deficit, when it's underneath what we're making, we have to borrow money. Who wants to buy American government debt? We're good for it. We always pay it back. And people love to buy American government debt. It's the safest asset there is. And so Japan is a huge buyer. Pension funds buy government debt. Aiden Calvin buys a lot of it because he asked me what to buy. That's the safest thing. That has allowed us to keep running bigger and bigger and bigger deficits because people keep buying our debt. However, lately, in like the post-2020 era, we've been going to the market and we've been putting out our huge deficits and asking for IOUs. And some days, we don't sell them all. This has never happened before, which is spooky. Okay, let's say the White House needs money to buy a new tank, and we go to the market and put out IOUs to buy the tank. If all the IOUs don't get sold, normally you'd be like, oh, well, tough titties. We can't afford the tank. But instead, what you might do is get the US Treasury to print money and buy the IOUs instead. Now, it's not allowed for the US Treasury to print money and give it to the government. That's bad. But if they print money and buy the IOUs, then it's all okay. Why have there been so many recessions or recession-esque events in the last 18 years? So what's funny is I disagree with that. I actually think that there's like a normal business cycle where things heat up, they get a little overheated, we get a little small recession, the chaff clears out, the bad companies clear out, people get to buy stuff for cheap, we innovate in new things, it grows. That's what should happen. But in fact, the government has done everything possible to stop any small recession happening, so we can only have big, massive ones. Anytime anything could happen, we just print a bunch of money, we flood the market, and we stop it. And all that does is stop any bad company from ever dying. It stops rich old people from ever losing money on anything. No matter where they buy the houses, the price will always go up. Whatever stupid stock they buy, it'll always go up. Everything is designed to make sure that the asset holders and the voters never have a bad day. In fact, I think it's the opposite of what you said here, where we've had too few of anything. If you let them happen as they come, they're relatively minor, and some people lose money, but it allows young people a chance to buy things for cheap and start the growth again. We haven't had the cycle. We've disrupted the whole cycle. Could you see yourself teaching as you get older? What do you think I'm getting? Fuck you. I'm not old. First of all, I'm not old. Second of all, I'm teaching right now.